She cleaned offices at night. One forgotten note changed her life. She pushed her cart through the silent hallway like she had every night for 7 years, but tonight she noticed a torn edge of paper curled under an office door, and something told her not to ignore it. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe if you love meaningful stories, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I really enjoy seeing where these stories travel. Maria Alvarez worked the graveyard shift at 312 Westmont Avenue, a 40-story building of glass and gray stone in the heart of downtown. The badge on her uniform said night services, but no one ever called her that. Most didn't know her name at all. Her shift started at 9 p.m. when the lights dimmed and the office floors turned hollow. She would wheel her cleaning cart out of the janitor's room, tuck her earbuds in, and move through the building like a shadow. Vacuum, empty bins, wipe screens, line up chairs, reset rooms that no one would use again until morning. Maria didn't mind the quiet. She preferred it. At home, things were noisier. Her son Luis had trouble focusing, trouble sleeping, trouble with math, and sometimes with people. His teachers had started sending notes home. He wasn't disruptive, just distant. Maria read every note like it was a report card on her as a mother. She never let him see that. She would come home just before dawn, boots dusty, hands dry from the chemicals. She made breakfast, packed his bag, walked him to the bus stop. He'd wave, she'd wave back. Then she'd nap for 4 hours, wake up to get groceries or go to the laundromat. She almost never stopped moving. At work, her favorite floor was 36. It smelled less like air freshener and more like paper and coffee. There was an office on the corner, one with the lights always left half on and the blinds drawn high. The view reached over the city, past the river, to the hills. The man who worked there was never around at night. His name was on the plaque outside the door, Daniel Kwan, Senior Director. His office was always messy, papers scattered, post-its stuck to monitors, coffee rings on wood. Once a week she wiped them all down, careful not to move the papers too much. She liked that he used real notebooks instead of just screens. Sometimes she caught a glimpse of a sentence. Once, call board re Q3. Another time, don't forget flowers for Mom. That one made her smile. It was strange how familiar these spaces became. She'd never met the people who used them, but she could guess who stayed late, who forgot their lunch, who liked jazz, who kept pictures of their kids near their keyboards. Nobody noticed her, but she noticed everything. That night in early November, she was running behind schedule. The elevator had stalled and the mop handle had cracked. By the time she reached 36, it was already close to midnight. She sighed and pushed open the office door. That's when she saw it. Just under the desk, half tucked beneath a rolling chair, was a yellow sticky note. She leaned down and picked it up. It was folded once, no name. On the inside, the handwriting was rushed but legible. Don't forget, call Mom tomorrow. She worries. She stood still for a long moment. The vacuum hummed behind her. The city lights blinked through the glass. Maria sat down in the chair. Just for a second. She hadn't heard her own mother's voice in over a year. The phone bill had become too much. Letters were slow and never enough. She placed the note gently back on the desk and finished cleaning. The next night, she came back early. She brought her own sticky note, and she wrote just one line. She's lucky to have a son who remembers. She tucked it under the monitor, where she knew he'd see it. Then she turned off the light and wheeled her cart to the next room. Nothing else was different, but she felt it. Something had started. Maria unlocked the front door quietly, careful not to wake Luis, but the floorboards still creaked the way they always did near the kitchen. She placed her keys in the chipped ceramic bowl by the sink, kicked off her work shoes, and stretched her back. The clock on the stove blinked 5:42 a.m. She had just enough time to boil water, fry 2 eggs, and pack his lunch before he stirred. Outside, the sun hadn't risen yet, but the sky was starting to lighten. The old radiator clanked twice and rattled on. The apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, beige carpet and scuffed walls, but it was clean. She kept it that way. The only pictures were of Luis at various ages, taped carefully above the couch. Luis came out of his room a few minutes later, rubbing his eyes, hair sticking up on one side. "Morning," he said, voice hoarse. "Morning," she replied, and kissed his forehead. He sat at the table, staring at the eggs. She handed him a fork and sat across from him with her tea. "How was school yesterday?" she asked. "Fine," he said. She waited. "They started a new unit in history. I got a C on the last quiz." "Was it hard?" "I just forgot to study." She didn't scold him. He already looked disappointed in himself. After he left for school, she showered quickly and lay down for a few hours. The pillow was still warm from last night. She stared at the ceiling until her body gave in. At noon, she got up and opened the note drawer. She didn't keep much for herself, but she'd held on to a few birthday cards, some old letters from her mother in Mexico, and now, the sticky note from Daniel's office. She hadn't expected anything from it. She'd just written what she felt. Still, she found herself wondering if he'd seen it, wondering if he'd read it and what he thought, wondering if he'd write something back. That night at work, she walked a little faster. She didn't want to admit it to herself, but she was looking forward to floor 36. The office looked the same as always, except the note was gone. Not just her note, but the one from the night before, too. In their place, under the monitor, was a fresh sticky note with 5 words. "Thank you. I really did." Maria smiled. It was the first time she had smiled at work in a long time. She took the note, folded it carefully, and placed it in her pocket. She didn't leave a reply that night. She wasn't sure what to say. But the next night, she brought a new note. "You made me remember, too." She left it, then went about her work. The rhythm of her nights started to shift. She moved quicker through the lower floors. She saved 36 for last. Some nights, there was a note waiting. Other nights, she left one first. They were always short. No names, no details, but they shared pieces of themselves. "I didn't get along with my dad. I think about that a lot. My husband used to bring me flowers on Tuesdays, even when we had nothing. I've been staying late because I don't like going home. My son's been struggling, but I think he's trying." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't poetic. It was just real. Each note was like a small light in a quiet place. She didn't know what he looked like. She didn't need to. They were just 2 people, strangers, really, passing paper across a desk in the middle of the night. But it mattered. It was more than silence. It was being seen. Maria walked onto floor 36 with her gloves already on, and her cart stocked the way she liked it. Rags folded tight, spray bottles full, the vacuum cord looped in neat circles. The hallway lights were dimmed low, but the city outside burned in cold yellow. She started with the break room. Counters first. Microwave next. Someone had left their lunch in the fridge again. Expired yogurt cups shoved to the back. She tossed them, washed her hands, moved on. The offices on this floor weren't all the same. Some were wide open with long tables and dry erase boards covered in arrows and numbers. Others were small, with only one desk, one chair, a phone, and a nameplate. The doors were never locked, and Maria never snooped. But she noticed things. The guy in 3612 always left his laptop unlocked. The woman in 3615 lined up pens by color. In 3619, the same post-it had been stuck on the cabinet for months. Trust the process. Daniel Kwan's office, though, his was different. It wasn't just the view or the furniture, though those stood out. Leather chairs, dark wood desk, a tall bookshelf with hardcovers that looked barely opened. The office always smelled like the last sip of coffee. But it was the way the papers were scattered, not messy for the sake of it, more like a storm had moved through. Reports half-folded, legal pads with margins full of scribbles, notebooks flipped open to different pages. He wasn't organized, but he was always working. Maria had never met him. Not in the lobby, not in the elevator, not even once in passing. She assumed he came in late, stayed later. She doubted he noticed the way the trash was emptied just right, or how his chair was always nudged back in place. She never needed him to notice. But now, with the notes, something had shifted. There was a sense of presence, not just hers but his, too. They hadn't said names, hadn't shared anything personal beyond the scraps of memory they passed under the monitor. But she felt like she knew him. Not his job or his voice or his face, just the parts he let slip. Tonight, there wasn't a note waiting. That happened sometimes. But she still checked the spot beneath the monitor, her hand pausing for a second longer than necessary. Nothing. She didn't leave one either. Instead, she cleaned like usual, wiped the desk, dusted the windowsill, emptied the small trash can by the side. As she bent to replace the liner, something caught her eye, sticking out from under the desk drawer. A white envelope. No name. Just one word written on it. For you. She sat down in the desk chair just for a moment, peeled it open. Inside was a single page. Handwritten, careful letters, no fancy loops or cursive. You don't know me, but your words have helped. I lost my dad last spring. We hadn't spoken in years. I didn't go to the funeral. I've been carrying that around for a while. When I read what you wrote about flowers on Tuesdays, it reminded me of when my mom used to cut roses from the yard and put them in Coke bottles on the table. I don't know why I'm telling you this. I guess I just wanted to say thank you for reminding me that memory can be soft too, not just sharp. Maria held the letter in both hands. She didn't cry, but she sat there longer than she usually allowed herself. Then she folded the letter and slid it into the front pocket of her uniform. She wrote nothing back that night. Some words didn't need answering. Some just needed holding. Luis sat on the couch with his math book open but untouched. The TV was on low volume, flickering light across his face. Maria stood in the kitchen packing dinner into 2 containers, one for him, one for her to take to work. You need help? She asked, drying her hands on a dish towel. No, he said. She waited. I don't get it, though, he admitted after a minute. She walked over and sat beside him. The numbers looked jumbled to her, but she tried to follow. Fractions and decimals and something about percentages. She wasn't sure she could explain it right, but she pointed to what she understood. They worked through one problem together. He got the next one on his own. Maria smiled, then stood and grabbed her jacket. I'm leaving the chicken in the fridge. Heat it up, not too long. I know, he said, not looking up. Don't stay up late. I won't. He said it the way teenagers do, half listening, half sincere, but he smiled a little, and that was enough. At work that night, Maria moved slower. Not tired, just distracted. She kept thinking about the letter from Daniel. Not the words exactly, but what they meant. That something she wrote had reached someone. That her small truth had landed somewhere it mattered. She hadn't told anyone about the notes. Not Luis, not her sister who called every other Sunday, not the older woman who worked mornings and always left a thermos of cinnamon coffee in the janitor's closet. It felt private, like a garden no one else could walk through. She finished her work on the lower floors quickly, emptied bins, sanitized desks, swapped out the printer paper on 24. Then she took the elevator to 36. The hallway was quiet. Only one light flickered, the one above the copy machine. Inside Daniel's office, things were tidier than usual. The coffee cups were gone, the notebooks stacked. A single folder sat in the center of the desk. Maria looked around. No note. She wiped down the desk slowly, checked the corners, then moved to vacuum the rug. As she turned off the vacuum and wrapped the cord, she noticed something. A small envelope taped to the inside of the door, eye level, written in black pen. "If you're still reading." She peeled it off carefully, opened it. Inside, a new letter, shorter this time. "I'm leaving town for a while. Family stuff. Not sure how long. I didn't want to disappear without saying something. Your words have meant more than I can explain. They made me feel less alone in a building full of people. Thank you for every one of them." No name, no return. Maria folded the letter and placed it in her pocket with the first. Then she stood in the center of the room for a long minute. She didn't feel disappointed. Not exactly. Just quiet. The connection had never been about outcome. It was about the moment of being seen, and knowing someone else saw you back. She didn't leave a note that night. She just closed the door softly behind her. When she reached the elevator, she looked out through the high windows at the city. The lights blurred. The streets below were empty. She pressed the button for the ground floor, and she smiled. Not because something had ended, but because something real had happened. 2 days passed before Maria wrote another note. She didn't plan it. There wasn't a moment when she sat down and thought it through. But while packing Luis's lunch in the morning, tuna sandwich, apple slices, the same cookies he always pretended not to like, she looked at the fridge and saw a sticky pad hanging there by a magnet. She pulled off the top one and wrote, "Some nights still feel less quiet because of you. Hope you're okay." She didn't take it to work. She folded it and placed it in the drawer with the others. Then she went back to making coffee. At work that night, she kept moving. The 36th floor felt different without the notes. Not worse, just different. Like someone had turned off a lamp in a room where you weren't finished reading. She kept cleaning, kept noticing things. The woman in 3615 had switched pen brands. The guy in 3612 finally added a photo to his desk. Him and a dog, both grinning. The "trust the process" note in 3619 had fallen off. Maria stuck it back with fresh tape. She didn't avoid Daniel's office. She cleaned it the way she always had. Polished the wood, checked the trash, wiped the inside of the window where someone had left a fingerprint. But there were no new letters, no envelopes taped to the door, no movement. She started to wonder if she'd imagined how much it had meant to him. But then she thought about the letter again, the one that said, "They made me feel less alone in a building full of people." And she knew she hadn't. Not long after, Luis found the drawer. She was folding laundry when she heard him call from the hallway. "Mom?" "Yes?" "What's this?" He was holding the stack of notes. She froze. He didn't look angry, just confused, curious. She took a breath and walked over. "Those are from work," she said. "From who?" "A man who used to work on one of my floors. We never met. We just started writing. Little notes. At night." Luis read the top one. "He wrote this?" She nodded. "You never talked?" "Only through paper." Luis was quiet for a second. Then he said, "That's kind of cool." She laughed once. "Yeah, it was." "Can I write one?" he asked. Maria looked at him. He was taller now, she realized, his face changing shape slowly, voice deeper, but still soft. "Sure," she said, "if you want." He grabbed a sticky note from the fridge, sat at the table, wrote something down, then folded it and handed it to her. "You don't have to give it to him," he said, "but you can if you want." She opened it later, after he went to bed. "Your notes made my mom smile. That means something." Maria didn't take it to the office. She wasn't sure if Daniel would ever be back. Instead, she placed it in the drawer, tucked it with the others. The notes had started as something between two strangers, but now they were part of her home. Not just what had been written, but what had changed, inside her and in the space between her and Luis. The silence in her life felt different now, less like a wall, more like a place where things could grow. 2 weeks passed without a new note. Maria stopped checking the desk every night, not because she'd forgotten, but because she didn't need to anymore. Something about it had settled in her, like the final line of a letter that doesn't ask for a reply. She still cleaned the office, still noticed things. The notebooks had been cleared from the shelf. A small framed photo, Maria guessed it was Daniel and his mother, was gone. The mug with the chipped handle was missing from the corner. Someone had boxed up his things. That's when she knew for certain. He wasn't coming back. She stood in the doorway longer than usual, hand on the cart, eyes on the empty desk. Then she turned off the light and moved on. The days at home started to feel easier. Luis had stopped pretending not to like the cookies. He'd started asking her about work, little things at first, like, "How many floors do you clean?" Or, "Do you ever get to see the view from the top?" Then bigger ones. "Do you ever get lonely there?" She told him the truth. Sometimes. But not as much lately. One night, Maria came home from work and found another note on the table. Not from Daniel. From Luis. "I got a B on my history quiz. Thought you'd like to know." She smiled and stuck it on the fridge. The next day, she left one for him. "You should be proud of yourself. I am." They started doing it regularly. Not every day. Just now and then. Messages passed back and forth like tiny bridges. The notes at work had made her feel visible. The notes at home made her feel known. A month after Daniel's last letter, something unexpected happened. Maria was scrubbing the tile in the break room on floor 11 when she heard footsteps. Real ones. Not the building's occasional creaks. She stood, straightened her back, and turned. A man in a navy coat was waiting by the doorway. "Are you Maria?" She nodded, guarded. He stepped forward. "Daniel Kwan asked me to find you. He said if I ever transferred to this office I should introduce myself. Said you'd know why." Maria stared at him. "You know him?" "We worked together for a while. He's in Boston now. Family business. He said you were important to him. That I'd understand if I met you." She didn't know what to say. The man smiled gently. "He wanted me to give you something too." He reached into his coat pocket and handed her a small envelope. No note this time, just a printed photo. It was the desk in Daniel's old office, but not how she'd seen it last. The angle was different. Warmer light. In the center was the folded letter she'd written. She's lucky to have a son who remembers. Beside it was a vase of roses, cut short, arranged simply. In the corner of the photo, in Daniel's handwriting, was a line. "Tuesday flowers. You helped me remember too." Maria held the photo with both hands. She didn't cry. Not this time. The man in the coat gave a polite nod and walked away. Maria slipped the photo into her pocket. Later that night, after the vacuuming and the mopping and the stacking of chairs, she sat on a bench outside the building, coat zipped up, the city quiet around her. She didn't feel like a cleaner, or a stranger. She just felt like someone who had left something behind and taken something real in return. It was nearly spring when Luis came home with a letter in his backpack. He dropped it on the kitchen counter next to his lunchbox and opened the fridge. Maria picked up the envelope and saw the school's logo in the corner. "Did you get in trouble?" she asked, half joking. Luis grabbed a bottle of juice, didn't look at her. "No, it's good. Just read it." She opened the letter slowly, unsure what to expect. Her eyes moved across the page. Then again. It was from one of his teachers, Ms. Drayton. It talked about progress, how Luis had been more engaged in class, how he'd started helping others during group work, how he volunteered to read out loud, how his writing had become more personal. There was a line that stayed with her. He wrote about someone he called a quiet helper. He said she reminded him how to pay attention to people even when they don't say much. That stayed with me, too. Maria folded the letter carefully and placed it back on the counter. Luis was still at the fridge, pretending to browse. "You didn't tell me you wrote about me," she said. He shrugged. "I didn't say it was you." She smiled. "But it was." He nodded. "You paying attention now?" she asked. He looked up at her, finally. "Trying to." Later that week, Maria found a note stuck to the bathroom mirror, one of the fridge sticky notes. The handwriting was crooked, the edges slightly damp from the steam. "Don't forget, you're the reason I believe people notice." She didn't say anything when she read it. She just left it there. At work, things remained quiet. Daniel's office had a new nameplate. Different setup. Same view. Maria still cleaned it. Still moved around it with care. But it didn't carry the same weight anymore. It didn't need to. She thought about leaving a final note. One that said goodbye. One that said thank you. But she realized she already had. In every note she'd written, every moment she'd paused to read someone else's words, it was already there. One Friday night, while she was dusting the windowsill, the security guard came by. Older man, gray beard, soft voice. "You the one who leaves the sticky notes?" he asked. Maria froze. "What do you mean?" He smiled, not unkind. "I've seen 'em. Noticed them a while back. They stopped for a bit. Then one showed up again a few weeks ago, by the freight elevator." She hadn't left anything by the elevator. He reached into his coat pocket and handed her a folded paper. Yellow. Familiar. "Some people say too little. Some people listen too much. But now and then, you find someone who balances both. Thanks for reminding me to pay better attention." Maria didn't know who wrote it. Maybe another worker. Maybe Daniel sent it through someone. Maybe someone else entirely. She didn't need to know. She placed it in her bag and finished her shift. At home, she taped it to the inside of the kitchen cabinet, the one she opened every morning for the coffee filters. Because sometimes the right words don't come when you're looking for them. They come later, in echoes, in return. The letter came folded inside a sealed manila envelope, tucked into her locker on a Thursday night. No stamp, no return address. Just her name written in block letters across the front. Maria. She opened it slowly. Inside was a typed page and a business card clipped to the top. The note was short. "Maria, I don't know what you expected from those notes. Maybe nothing. Maybe just a moment of connection. But you changed something in me. I've spoken about you more times than you'll ever know. In interviews, in meetings, in rooms where no one else sees the people who hold everything together. I'll keep it short. There's a job for you if you want it. Day shift, front desk, better pay, fewer stairs, more light. If you're ready, the door's open. Daniel." She stared at it for a long time. The words didn't feel real at first. Not because she didn't believe them, but because she hadn't asked for any of it. She had just shown up, night after night, done her work, listened, wrote what felt true. That was it. She read it again. Then she folded it and put it in her purse. When she got home, Luis was watching a science video at the kitchen table. Headphones in, cereal bowl half full. She sat across from him and placed the letter on the table. He looked at it, then looked at her. "What is it?" "It's a job offer." He blinked. "You're quitting?" "Not quitting. Changing. It's mornings now. Front desk." "Is it better?" She nodded. "Better pay. Normal hours. I'd be home in the evenings." Luis sat back. "So, no more nights?" "No more nights." She didn't say anything else, and neither did he. But he smiled. A quiet one. The kind you only make when something feels settled. Monday morning, she walked into the building through the front doors instead of the service entrance. She wore her nicest blouse, one Luis had picked out once at the thrift store, light blue, with a small embroidered flower near the collar. Her name tag was different now, not plastic, metal. It said, Maria Alvarez, Welcome Services. The job was simple. Greet people, answer questions, sign for packages, keep the front space clean and calm. She still noticed things. The woman in the red heels who always rushed in at 8:58 a.m., the man with the newspaper who sat in the corner chair until his meeting was called, the interns who whispered too loud when they thought no one was listening. She noticed everything. And this time, people noticed her too. They said good morning. They smiled when they passed. They remembered her name. One afternoon, a delivery driver dropped off a box with no name, just a label, to the one who paid attention. Inside was a small glass frame. Behind the glass, a yellow sticky note. The original one. She's lucky to have a son who remembers. Maria held it for a long time, then placed it on her desk, next to the sign-in sheet. People asked about it sometimes. She just said it was a reminder, not of what had happened, but of what can happen when someone writes something honest and someone else reads it. When two people cross paths without ever needing to explain why it matters. Because sometimes the smallest note can carry the biggest truth. The alarm went off at 6:15 a.m., but Maria was already awake. She didn't need to rush anymore. No more racing the clock to finish a shift before the sun rose. No more buses in the dark or aching feet on quiet stairwells. She moved through the kitchen with a rhythm she hadn't felt in years. Coffee on, toast in, Luis's backpack ready by the door. He came out 5 minutes later, half asleep, but already smiling. "You're not in your work shirt," he said, pointing. "Nope," she replied. "You off today?" "Just later shift. I'll be home before dinner." He grabbed a slice of toast, nodded, and sat at the table. That's how their mornings went now. Simple, shared, unrushed. At work, Maria sat behind the front desk and watched the building move around her. The flow of people, the buzz of conversations, the occasional burst of laughter from the far side of the lobby. She greeted them all. By name, if she could. And if she didn't know it yet, she asked. She didn't need to clean anymore, but she still noticed when a chair was crooked or a countertop was smudged. She straightened them without thinking. Not because she had to, just because it felt right. The photo frame with the sticky note still sat on her desk. Most people walked by without seeing it. Some stopped to read it. A few asked. She always gave the same answer. It's a reminder. When she wasn't at the desk, she moved through the building like she used to, except now in daylight, with her name on a badge people read. One afternoon, She took the elevator up to 36. Not for work, just to see. The office that once held the notes had been remodeled. New desk, new furniture. But the view was the same. City skyline, river, hills. She stood by the window for a while, hands in her coat pockets. Then she turned and walked back out. She didn't feel sad. That space had done its work. She passed by a bulletin board near the break room. Someone had pinned up a quote in block letters. The smallest act of attention can change someone's day, maybe even their life. She didn't know who wrote it, but she smiled. On her lunch break, Maria pulled a small notebook from her bag. Not a sticky note this time, just lined paper. She wrote slowly, with a pen that clicked softly in her hand. If you're reading this, I just want you to know, you're not invisible.
Not here.
Not anymore. She didn't sign it. She just folded it and slid it into the edge of the guest log book. Someone would find it eventually. That night, she walked home with the sun still up. Luis was waiting on the steps. He stood when he saw her, backpack slung over one shoulder. "Hey," he said. "Hey," she said. They walked up together, side by side. Inside, the kitchen was warm with the smell of rice and beans. The window over the sink was open, letting in a soft breeze. She reached into her purse and pulled out a note, his old one, the one he'd written months ago. "Your notes made my mom smile. That means something." She placed it on the fridge again. It still meant something. It always would. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy meaningful stories like this, we'd love to have you as a subscriber.